here live, and today we have a special guest, one of the artists who was featured in our Clayfornia exhibit. Mary Beierle is here to talk about her work with us.
Hi everybody, thank you for joining us, and I'm so excited to be here with Carrie and look at all these amazing plants that grow in California and look at Clayfornia and the sculptures we have.
All right, it's such a treat to have you here today, Mary. So right here at the beginning, we have Janelle Lewis's sculpture that we're going to talk about, but I just wanted to point out one of the really fantastic plants that we have in flower right now at the garden, and it's the Matillah poppy.
Does that grow in our yards here in Southern California?
Yes, it can grow very well here, especially in drier environments. And this is also known as the fried egg poppy. So it's in the same family as the poppy family. So Papaveraceae is the family.
That's your new logo, right?
That's correct. So we recently changed our name to California Botanic Garden. Before, we were Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden, and our former logo was the Sycamore Leaf.
Tell me about the sycamore leaf, because you mentioned that hummingbirds love it. Why?
They love it because there's this pubescence or fuzz on the plant, and so the hummingbirds will collect it and use it for nests. And so it's really cute to see little hummingbird nests in it. So if you have a tree like this growing in your yard, you may have little hummingbird nests there as well.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so here you have, it's very different from the Rhamnias that we see over there. So that's Rhamnia coulteri, and then this is the sycamore flowers, and so you can have as many as 100 flowers.
On each ball?
Mm-hmm.
They're so tiny.
Yeah, it's spectacular.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's go over and see Janelle Lewis's work.
This sculpture is such a hoot. I will say, as I drive up this driveway every day into work, I laugh because I find so much humor. Like, I can see Janelle Lewis's sense of humor in her work.
Absolutely. She was telling me this story of how her mother was raised on a farm, and so eating the farm animals was normal, but one day her mother cooked the family pet goose, and it was traumatizing for the family. And so this is like helping us get rid of the detritus and all those kind of memories that are so painful for us, even as we age, and letting them go and finding some humor in our short lives.
I will say that this one was the last. We installed her pieces, and it took about 2 days to do, and these are very heavy. So this weighs about, I'd say, 150 pounds, like each piece of it, so it's 2 parts. And then we have these additional little goose heads.
And there's some in the back too that may be harder for the camera to see, but also you can see that it's made in several parts so it can fit into the kiln, and so then it's fired separately, and then when it's all done it can be joined together.
And so she paints these then once it's finished being fired. Is this just regular paint that she uses, or
Normally
is
we
this
use glazes. Let's see if I can get if it says anything. It says it's ceramic, so that's probably glazes, because glaze is a glass that you put on your clay, and then when it's fired you have basically ceramic glass on your piece, and it can withstand any kind of weather. And archaeologists love to study it because it identifies time periods and cultures. So this can last forever.
And this is great because it can, I was a little worried about this exhibit because it's outside, but then I was reassured that ceramic is perfect for this type of environment with
Right.
rain and sun.
Yes. I mean, we have ceramic articles that are 30,000 years old, and so they can last. Not forever. Just think about the decomposition of a rock, but for a long, long, long time.
Oh, that's really fascinating.
When we fire these, we are firing to the temperature that a volcano is making molten rocks.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And so All right, I've never seen a kiln before, but when you put something like this in a kiln, how big is the kiln?
This, the American Museum of Ceramic Art, who's a co-partner in this exhibition, has some very large kilns. I'm 5'2". I can kind of stand up in it.
Oh, wow.
And then there's smaller kilns too. You can get kilns that are little tiny, but the American Museum of Ceramic Art has very large ones also.
Excellent. And then you can see in the back, there's the coastal agave, so agave shallii. And you can see 2 additional goose heads in the back. And so when we installed it, both Janelle and I came out of it very scratched up and bloody because the leaves are very, very sharp on those agaves.
Yes.
So that was a lot of fun doing that one. But
Well,
I love this. I love this. I love coming in and seeing it every day. It's definitely one of my favorites to see.
Definitely. We just walked under an oak tree. How old can an oak tree live? How long can an oak tree live?
Oh wow! I could say that an oak tree can live for hundreds of years. They're quite old. One interesting thing about oaks, they have both male and female flowers. So these are the male flowers. They're catkins. And so around this time of the year, you may be like, I'm having allergies. Really bad. And it's maybe due to the oak pollen that's hanging off of these. So, and then the female flowers are also very, very, very tiny. But yeah, these are an example of the male flowers that deliver the pollen to the female flowers, which will develop into the acorns, which we're very familiar with.
The Chumash, who were California Indians, Native Americans, first people that inhabited this area, used the acorns. But isn't it a very laborious process to get the bitterness out of the acorn?
You have to soak them. I'm not familiar with how long you have to soak them, but you have to get those tannins out of the acorns. It's kind of amazing how squirrels and other animals can just consume them without feeling ill after eating an acorn.
Now, I just recently learned that the California Botanic Garden is the largest botanic garden in the world devoted to California plants.
That's correct. We have approximately 2,000 taxa. So taxa could be species or subspecies of plants here. And these plants that we have on our grounds are all cataloged and they're accessions. So this is essentially a museum of living plants. We also have a research department as well that has a herbarium, and we have one of the largest herbaria.
What's a herbaria?
So when you go out and collect plants, you dry them, you put them in a press, you dry them, and then you have a label on them. So because they're dried, they're on permanent archival paper, and the label will have the species, the name of the plants, where it came from. It could have who collected it, and the person who collects it has an individual collection number, so it can be used as a voucher. And we have a herbarium that contains, I forget how many, a million plants, but we have a lot of plants in our herbarium. And they're arranged by family and by genus and where they're from. So they're from all around the world. We have a substantial collection from California, Mexico, but you know, a lot of people do work in the neotropics, which is what I do. And so when I go out in the field, I collect, dry the plants, and then it gets deposited into the herbaria. That can be used for things like DNA, so you can extract DNA from the herbarium plants. You could use it for morphology and like take pollen, for example, from it and look at it under the scanning electron microscope. You could use it for carbon isotope ratios. So there's so many things that you can do with herbaria. So this is an example of, it's called the tuberosa, which means hummingbird. And so this is Justicia californica. So you can see it here. It is a wonderful plant that I study. So this is the only species of Justicia that occurs in the state of California. However, there are approximately 400 species of this plant, and mostly they are found in the tropics.
I know that you have annual sales. Is this plant in the annual sale? Because that looks like it would attract bees and other.
Yes. So this can be found in our Grow Native nursery for purchase. We have a lot of the plants that you see here are made available for purchase here. I would grow this if you want to have a desert garden, because this is a desert species. It promotes hummingbird visits, because the hummingbirds use it to get nectar, and bees do also visit it as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. What else should we see?
Well,
What about the palms here? Or should we talk about the palms later?
we can talk about the palms later, but look through the sculptures that I see right ahead.
Yeah.
So Mary, these are fantastic, and they are so beautiful and perfect for this wildflower meadow that we have. And would you mind describing the process and your inspiration for creating these remarkable pieces?
Sure. The larger ones were made with about 1,000 pounds of wet clay. I make my own clay body so that it'll do what I need it to do. I want it to be vitreous at a lower temperature. But what the inspiration for this was, before I started studying art as a middle-aged person, I was actually working on documentaries with One Bowl Production. And one of the Native American leaders, Chief Oren Lyons, he's a faith keeper in chief for the Onondaga people, would tell me, you don't have the problems you think you have. The problems we have are because the ice is melting, the glaciers are melting, the North and South Pole are melting very rapidly, and that's going to be causing problems in migration and wars and land. And so that was rolling around in my head, so I wrote a grant and went up to see the largest calving glacier in North America, the Hubbard Glacier, and surrounding glaciers. I visited several dozen glaciers in Alaska. And when I came back, I didn't know what to do with that information. Some of the glaciers were 300 feet tall, and they're 6 miles long, and I just couldn't imagine translating that. But I also love bonsai gardens, like the Huntington Library and Gardens. And so I thought, okay, these may be big for ceramic sculpture, but I'll think of them as bonsai compared to a 300-foot actual glacier like the Hubbard Glacier. And these take months to do. You can only go up so high at a time without it collapsing. And I have some handmade paddles that I use to rhythmically paddle the divots and the curves and all these forms within it. And it's become ceremonial. And I had the great fortune to be able to participate in some Native American sweats, which are very ceremonial, and visit the Sundance, the Native American Sundance, not the film festival. And that rhythmic pounding is like the heartbeat of the earth, is like a heartbeat, our own heartbeats. And so I was making my own music on these. And the holes are just indications of the fact that it's melting. I don't know if you can get a view from the top, Paul, but I did thousands of glaze tests to get these glaze colors. And so the inside is like the water that's cascading as these glaciers are melting.
That's really, you can really see it on the back.
Yeah, I wanted people to be able to peek in and see it too.
This color is very beautiful too, like on the back. So what glaze was used to make this beautiful blue color?
It's actually a copper-based glaze, and copper in reduction is liver red, and you have to have a kiln full of a lot of oxygen, and I'm making these inside a very large kiln, and so firing them in a gas kiln in oxidation is actually challenging. And one of the first ones I did, I opened up the kiln and it was this 6-foot liver red color, and Tony Marsh looked at it and said, "Oh, you have 1,000-pound test tile, huh?" But I'd done enough tests that I knew if I refired it in plenty of oxygen and re-glazed it, and watched the kiln, babysat the kiln, that it would turn back into blue. But if you look at some of the areas on the sculptures very closely, you see these veins that are remnants of the reduction, the starving of the oxidation, and it looks like blood vessels to me in my own brain. So, especially on some of those over there.
These look so beautiful among the sunflowers that we have. So we have Gilianthus, those really big, tall, yellow sunflowers, and these attract a lot of bees. Bees love, so you can see the bees like all over this one over here. But also birds really love to come and eat the seeds. So they're like, the sunflower seeds. The littler, they're in flowers that are from the same family, Asteraceae. It's a very species-rich family among flowering plants. These ones are found throughout drier habitats. It's called Beierle multiradiata.
Carrie, earlier you picked one of those flowers and you held it in your hand and showed me all of the hundreds of flowers that are actually inside each flower, right?
Right. So here we have, these are called ray flowers. So this is called multiradiata, and so that means that there's various levels of these ray flowers. So each one of these is a single flower, right? So this is a petal, and inside it'll have the reproductive parts like the stigma and the anthers, so the male and female parts of the flower. And then in here, these are individual disc flowers. So you can see these are each little tiny flowers. And then those will develop into a seed. So like imagine like sunflower seeds, for example. And so that's what the birds are eating in these dehisced older flowers. Like once the fruit matures, they'll have the seed at the bottom.
So when we pick a flower, we should really say, "I'm picking flowers."
For these, yeah. Multi-flowers. So over here, so there's some more of your other sculptures. So this is a part of different series.
Yes, I call it memories of vanishing things because the glaciers around the world are melting so rapidly. Will we have them by 2020? Who knows? I mean, it depends on us. Do we have the political will to fight climate change? It's going to take all of us.
For sure. It's terrifying, actually.
Yeah. So each of these was when it was wet, was about 1,000 pounds. When you fire it, the water is the chemical and physical water leaves the structure, and it has some places up to an inch of glaze on it, very thick places. These are my own glazes that I formulated to make this. Lots of experimentation, at least 1,000.
Is this the first outdoor exhibit that you've done, or do you mainly show your sculptures indoors?
I had the good fortune to show at the Sam and Alfreda Maloof Foundation. So that was really exciting.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
I think this looks absolutely fabulous with the yellow and the blues contrasting. We also have these nolinas. We can see the hummingbird just perching on the nolina at the top of the older inflorescence. So those flower once they hit maturity at about 35 years, and it sends a long stalk up, and then they flower.
Now, is that The yucca? Is the common name yucca?
No, this is no lina.
No lina. Okay.
We'll see the yuccas over as we go towards Jonas's sculptures.
One of the things about this last sculpture on this walk is that I wanted it to have vestiges of human form. We as humans think that often we're separate from nature. We live in air-conditioned and heated homes. We wear all these clothes, but we are part of nature. And I'm thinking about that connection of civilization and nature, how we need to be more respectful of the environment in which we're in. So, for example, if you see the glazes at the top, that's remnant of glaciers melting, just the water flowing all over the human body. What would we be without water? Dead.
Where would we be without plants?
Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why plants are so important. And so we have a plant conservation department here, and we're devoted to the conservation of California plants. And we have several different projects, from seed banking projects where we're preserving the seeds in our seed bank.
Wonderful.
And then also we're doing population genomic studies as well to understand gene flow of some of these rarer species.
So you can see where I've paddled it, and then getting the glaze to drip. No, that's just a drip right there.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
It's just glaze.
That's just glaze dripping.
Oh, wow.
But the paddle marks and my finger marks, clay, since the beginning of human existence, humans have loved clay, and you'll often see finger marks in works.
This resembles sort of a person too.
Exactly,
In a lot of ways.
exactly. It's the
Or
confluence.
multiple people.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so cool.
Thank you. And I love this path that we're walking on. Tell me about this serpent or snake path. What do you call it?
So this is our the snake path that was done by Judy Bonzi, and Judy Bonzi is the great granddaughter of Susanna Bixby Bryant, who was the founder of the Botanic Gardens when it was once Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Gardens. So it was founded in 1927, and then it was later moved to Claremont in 1951. And so this has been the spot since 1951. Before it was near Yorba Linda. So and then that was part of the reason why we changed our name, because we worked in Santa Ana, and so people would often think, our botanic garden, is it in Orange County? And so a lot of people were confused by that with our name.
I'm really glad you changed it. It's easier for me to say, California Botanic Garden.
That's one of the reasons too. We are the largest botanic garden devoted to California native plants, so the name is perfect for that. And yeah, with 6,000, estimated 6,000 species of native plants in California, we have.
Earlier you let me touch this and smell. So as your guests are walking through, the visitors, they're allowed to touch the plants and smell?
You can.
Don't touch the
Don't,
poison ivy.
Don't pick the flowers. Yeah, I don't think we have. We may have poison ivy in the
poison
back.
oak?
Poison oak in the back
Yeah.
part. But this is Artemisia Dentata. And this plant has oils on it that give it this lovely smell. And these oils can help keep the water in. It's a good plant if you want to have a water-wise garden. It attracts bees, butterflies. It's a really lovely smelling aromatic plant. And so the leaves have these glands on them. So when you see them in a microscope, they look like little bulbous flowers sometimes. And that's what excretes the different oils and gives off that nice scent. Salvias is another example. So anything in lots of plants in the Lamiaceae have leaves with glands on them. So you can see smell on this particular species of salvia. Mint, so that's also the mint family. So your mints, lavenders are all in that same family.
You have very exciting programming here too. You have classes on arranging wildflowers and edible wildflowers. I know that sometimes the Tongva people are here doing
Acorn, the Acorn Festival, and that's usually around November. We have a really successful program called Bump in the Night. With the pandemic, we had to dial it back, obviously, and do take-home boxes. But it's around Halloween, and it's not meant to be scary, but it's an educational experience for children and adults alike. So we'll have like nighttime insects, like hawk moths. We'll catch certain insects.
Oh my goodness.
And they'll have wolves will come. Like someone will bring like wolves
Really?
to it. Birds Unlimited. The Audubon Society, they'll bring their owls as well. And then they'll learn about carnivorous plants, just the different, like what happens at night at the garden. And so the children and families will come in the evening and they'll have flashlights, and it's a really great time. But hopefully, as restrictions begin to relax, we may be able to have a bump in the night this year, but that's to be determined, as
I don't
as
know
it
if
goes.
the audio can pick this up, but you can hear so many birds today.
Mhm.
And I know you have Bird Month too that just passed.
Winter
right?
Bird Fest,
Yeah.
right, that's correct. And so a lot of the birds that will migrate through here happen around that time of the year. And so it's a great time to be here at the garden for that. Also, there's several bird walks that we would have as well, too.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You were saying that in this area is endangered plant? Or
Oh, sure, Yucca brevifolia. So we'll approach that as we go to Jonas's sculpture. There's several endangered plants that we have here, and we also hold seeds of in our seed house. So in our conservation department has that. These ones are this is Diplocus. This isn't rare, but this used to be in the genus Mimulus, and they call this monkey flowers.
why did they move it?
Because based on DNA evidence. So we sequence, genes, or we look at their, we compare their genes,
Amazing.
Yeah, so we use DNA. We extract DNA from the leaves, and then each one has an individual sequence. We'll align those sequences, and ones with similar sequences will cluster together. And so the Mimulus is what a lot of the things that were in Mimulus were not each other's closest relatives.
Interesting.
Basically, and so
It's such a beautiful plant. I see it all over when I'm hiking, but it can grow in our yards too, in drought-tolerant yards.
oh yeah, for sure. I'm looking to find one with a stigma that hasn't closed, and so these are kind of cool. This one
Watch this.
is
This is so
fun
cool.
if I can get it. So this is the stigma. When the stigma is touched, say by a pollinator or me, if it agrees with me right now, it will close up on its own. And of course, it's not doing it as we're filming, but then it closes up. And it could be a mechanism in pollination whenever pollen has visited it. So if you have it, try it in your yard. This one, of course, isn't doing it for us, but it worked earlier for
Yeah,
us.
it just closed, and they don't have a nervous system, so how do they close?
Well, it is a...
It's not a nervous system like ours.
No.
It's a plant nervous system.
Right. So, I'm losing things. Okay. So it's the reaction to the touch, though. But it is essentially, plants have xylem and phloem for uptake of water and sugars. And there's I can't really explain that totally, but yes, it just it's sort of like ours, and I don't know. Yes, so here we have the desert garden, and this has a lot of very beautiful plants like the fairy duster, so the Caliandra, that is in the Fabaceae family that you see here with the pink flowers. We have a lot of desert agaves here, and then Jonas' sculptures are here among the Joshua tree. And so the Joshua trees, what we see when we go to Joshua Tree, they've been recently given temporary status through the American Endangered Species Act. So they're currently in review, and right now it's illegal to cut down any Joshua trees. So this is Yucca brevifolia, and this is endangered due to climate change.
In my next series, I want to pay homage to some of the species that are being devastated by climate change. And I read that the Joshua tree in Joshua Tree National, is it a national park now? May not be there by the end of the century because it's becoming so harsh in the desert that the young can't survive. And so when the old ones die off,
It takes a long time for them to grow as well too. So the first couple of years they do experience reasonable growth, but then after that it's very, very slow growth. And they can, some are thought to live as long as 150 years.
Wow.
So they're probably, but they do say that they may be older ones in Joshua Tree.
amazing. Are we going to take a peek around the corner for
Yeah,
Jonas's
we can
work?
come right over this way.
I think it's a perfect location for Jonas's work. It reflects these projections up. It's this masculine form going up, and then it has all this this air of femininity by all the pinching of the layers of the clay. Come around. We have to see this.
This is one of my favorites here. It's, and the way he has it placed is perfect with the Yucca brevifolias. And so if you want to, we can take a little step in to take a closer look.
So he uses a stoneware clay body, so it can withstand the height and all the machinations that go on to make these structures. But and then it's also a copper glaze, and so when it's in the kiln and you starve it of oxygen, you get red instead of the turquoise.
In some way, these remind me of shelf fungi too, or just another planet. And I love how he uses these, the bases too.
Yes, it goes. Yes, and you were saying, because Jonas, when I was talking to him the other day, was mentioning that it has male and female attributes, but a lot of the plant world has male and female attributes.
That's correct. Many plants are bisexual in that they have both male and female parts. So they'll have anthers, which are the male parts of the flowers. The pollen-bearing structures come from the anthers, and then the female parts. What I just showed you on Mimulus, right? Or not Mimulus, Diplocus. That's the stigma, and that's where pollen is presented, and it develops into a pollen tube, which reaches the ovary, which is the fruit, essentially, what we eat, and the mature fruit is what we eat of the ovary, right?
Do
And
any of
then
these
it develops
plants in
into a
this?
seed.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Any of the plants in this area have those qualities?
Well, definitely the Beierles that you see here, the cacti fern flower right over here,
I feel so privileged getting
I
able to
know.
walk so closely to everything.
When you do visit the garden, we don't walk through. We stay on the path, but because this is a special thing, we can be good. So the Cylindropuntias, you can see there's some flowers here. This is Cylindropuntia californica, and so here are all the stamens, This is the male parts of the flower, and then here's the female.
So beautiful. So often we rush by all of this beauty without really taking a peek. So when you come visit, I encourage you to stop and look at the delicacy of the plant forms and the beautiful flowers all around us. It's amazing.
Yeah, and even working here, I sometimes forget about that because, you know, but it's so nice when you stop and take it all in.
My friends back east will often say, does California have diversity, you know, where it's not like going to Amsterdam or outside of Amsterdam and seeing tulips, but you were talking about the diversity we have in California.
Amazing diversity because the landscape is so diverse, and so we have different forested provinces. We have more coastal habitat where it receives more of like wet areas. There's dry desert areas. There's scrub regions. So it's pretty remarkable, the diversity of habitats. And then with these diversity of habitats, you're going to have a lot of plant diversity as well. And then right over here, this is so beautiful right now among the red and orange and yellow columbine, the Aquilegia that's growing around Beverly Helfer-Grand's sculpture.
Right. So she and Maureen Wheeler, who we'll see in a minute, her work, both had the privilege of studying with another local artist, Gary Lett. And Gary does realistic sculpture so beautifully. And Beverly was such an amazing student. And she was sculpting this while she was sick, and she was thinking about her children and loving her children, and created this beautiful sculpture. And she had fired those beads, but she didn't have a chance to attach them to the sculpture before she died, and one of her friends was able to do that and complete the sculpture.
Can I say that the love really does shine through this piece? And I didn't know that at all before, and you could tell that this was very special
Yes.
to her when she made it.
Yeah, she was just putting her whole heart into this piece, and it was so lovingly made.
It was beautiful.
Oh, buckwheat! I love the buckwheat. Can you talk about the buckwheat?
Oh, there's so many species of Eriogonum here, and these are great attractants for bees, and we are currently doing a lot of research, so systematic research on the buckwheat family. So we're trying to figure out which species are more closely related to one another. And then we're also looking at conservation of some rare species as well.
Do you sell the buckwheat in your? I have to have that plant.
It's
so beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then let's see. We are coming towards two more artists that we're featuring here. And one is David Pacheco, and he has this really beautiful sculpture called The Walls We Built. And then we're also going to be looking at Maureen Wheeler's sculptures as well. She has two on this lower mesa, so the mountain goat and the cat.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And all of these links are on your website, right?
That's correct.
Because last month you went up to the upper mesa to visit a lot of other artists' work. There's 14 people in the exhibition.
And you mentioned Gary Lett earlier. He also has two sculptures as well in our riparian garden. Janelle Lewis, who we saw earlier, has I think 7 other sculptures in our cultivar garden, and they're all very remarkable. Oh, I wanted to point out the fan palm oasis, which is really cool. This is our native palm species of Washingtonia that grows here. And so we mentioned the different educational programs that we do, and when we send out like a box, like an education box for kids to work on at home, we often include owl pellets. So the owls will often take their like rats or voles and fly to the tops nests or in the Washingtonias, and then they regurgitate their bones out below into these pellets.
And the kids get to find
Dissect it, yeah. So when you dissect it, you try to see what did the owl eat, So there's a bone map that they use. And my daughter loved it, like absolutely. It's a lot of fun for kids just to pick through.
I teach at Cypress College in their ceramics program, and mortuary science students often are my students because it's recommended they take ceramic hand building. And they're always sculpting bones, so I'm going to have them participate in this.
Dissection of owl pellets?
Yes.
So here we have some cucuras here. These are really pretty in shaded environments. So if you don't have an area that doesn't have a lot of sunshine, so like here we're under all the oaks, this is perfect if you want to have a flowering plant there. They send up these really pretty pink and white flowers. Bees often like them. You can see the little bee kind of hovering.
Do you have a favorite plant, Carrie? Or plant family?
I'll have to say it's the plant family I study, Acanthaceae, because in the tropics is where they have like all of their morphological diversity. The flowers are also different. They're pollinated by various types of animals. It's just really a challenging and remarkable family to work on. And so Justicia californica was that one that I had showed you earlier. So this sculpture comes from a very
deep place. It's autobiographical.
It really is. And it looks like wood.
And he did that purposefully, right?
Right.
In his artist statement, he talks about wanting it to look like wood. And ceramics is an amazing material because you can make it look like practically anything. And the texture on this is so beautiful. I'm glad the camera is able to get in there and we have permission to go off the path a little bit here because you can just see how many hundreds, if not thousands of hours he spent sculpting this and attaching the leaves for hair, working metaphorically. And it has multiple firings because the gold areas is actually minimally a third firing where he's attaching gold luster to that. And did you want to talk to why he wanted those happier places?
Yeah, so he had mentioned in his artist statement that the wood represents the walls that he built from childhood trauma, and he continued to build these walls through the course of his life, including his adult life. And this shiny gold luster that's coming out is the inner happiness that's dying to come out, and it's almost like healing in process.
Yes, I think I find that with my students all the time, whether at Chafee or Cypress, that when they're working with clay, there's several things happening. One is you can work from an intuitive place, and that can be very healing. And secondarily, humans are so connected to the earth that when we touch earth or soil, and clay is, from our earth, there's microorganisms in it that release endorphins in our brain, and endorphins are the chemical in our body that naturally help us feel better. So it's cathartic to look at and cathartic to make.
I love that the hair is leaves.
Yes.
I think it's leaves, right?
Yes.
It's really cool.
Yeah. It's leaves and serpents. I mean, this piece is so poignant. The gold, which is reflective of the happiness in his life, and then all the trauma that's gone on. So, very poignant piece, so beautifully made. I'd love to ask him how many hours it took for him to do this.
And it looks really fragile, too. Like, very, very fragile because of these fine portions.
Yes. Amazing piece.
So now we are on to our last area. And it's a construction zone over here currently. So
What are you building?
Oh, this is our forest pavilion. This is going to be a really wonderful, sustainable building that we're going to use for educational purposes, for school groups. It can be used as a facility to rent if there's a wedding. We could also host meetings here. It's going to be a really remarkable outdoor space.
When is it slated to be done?
Well, it should be done in the next few months.
Really?
Yeah, it's not much longer.
Wow.
So yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they've been working for a while here. So it's gonna be hard to see this, but we can walk kind of around.
So we're coming upon Maureen Wheeler's mountain goat, and I love where it's situated. Not that you can tell today, but normally you can see the mountains in the background, and right now those mountains are covered with clouds. But Maureen also took classes with Gary Ladd, and she's been working on her own for a long time now. And you can see how beautifully this mountain goat is sculpted too. And she's an architect also. And if you look at the way she's constructed this, it's like planes that you would have in architecture and the detail that an architect needs to have. I mean, when we make art, we bring our whole selves and our interests and our own unique abilities to our projects. She has another piece over here too. Let's go see the cat. People love the cat.
I love the cat because I'm a cat person. And I think when I was installing this with Maureen, she also really appreciates cats. And I love it how it just sits on top of the rocks and just watches. And that's pretty much what my cat does all day.
Yes, and you can also see, you know, when we work as artists, we bring all of the things that we're interested in to us. And Maureen, I was told, studied with Betty Davenport Ford, a local legend around here who is no longer with us. But it's beautiful to see remnants of her within Maureen's work. That beautiful sculptured, planar, very precise lines and shapes going on in that form. Just so beautifully done. And I love where it's perched too. Mm-hmm. Can't you imagine your own cat just sitting on top, watching, preening,
watching the construction.
Watching the, yes, curious cat. Beautiful.
And then before we go, I just wanted to show some Dudleya here. This is currently a part of the recent poaching craze.
What?
Dudleyas.
Why?
People are poaching Dudleyas for various reasons, and a lot of people are using it for, supposedly it's the latest fad of succulents, you know, and so it's become like a problem in coastal areas. So
people are
just poaching them from mountainsides, bags and bags of them to either sell or do whatever with them, you know, add them to their collection. And there are some rare species of Dudleya, so that's been in the news quite a bit. So be careful with what you buy, I suppose, you know. And so we do sell native some Dudleyas here as well. So
buy them. Plant them.
From responsible people.
Be responsible, yes.
So they're great for attracting bees, and they grow really well in dry habitats. And so that wraps it up of our tour of the Clayfornia on the Lower Mesa. So thank you for joining us, and thank you, Mary, for your expertise on this walk. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us, and thank you for having me. I've had so much fun today, and I learned a bunch of things too.
And the exhibition is open through the end of the month, and if people want to visit?
That's correct. So we are open Tuesday through Sunday. We're closed on Mondays. and the exhibition is open until May 30th. So please check out the final end of Clayfornia. It's been a great to have a part in this, the curation of this exhibit. It's been really fulfilling and a lot of fun too. So. Bye.
Thank you all for joining us.